Welcome to Talking in Stations. It's Matt All here with Rundle. How you doing, Rundle?
Doing very good. Hello, fellow capsuleers. I'm still trying to find my intro.
Your inner Ashtarothi.
Yeah, I'm trying to find my intro. I'll try something different next time.
Okay.
That doesn't feel right either.
Kind of sounded like Space Ghost, if you remember.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying a little.
I liked it. Okay, today we're going to talk a little bit about the war. And then, of course, we'll talk about the thing that's on everybody's mind, what these industrial changes are going to be like. And then we'll try to get out soon so we can rest up for tomorrow. We have a Friday show, which is usually a little more lively. By the way, we're coming up on Talking in Station's 5th anniversary as a show, or as a podcast and show. So we'll do something special. It's in about 2 weeks, mid-April. It happens to be right when World War B, or the Casino War, started. So we were getting this whole thing together right about now, and we started seeing move fleets that were kind of secret. People weren't really broadcasting them, and nobody was talking about them, but we were seeing them jump across the map. So NC was coming up from Delve, going towards the Tribute area. Test was going up the east side of the map, and Pandemic Legion was already there. There was already some dread fights that had been going on with CO2 and some low-sec parties. So all that was happening about 5 years ago, and Talking in Stations was basically born at that time. And we're saying, nobody's told us anything, but we think something's going down here because you have these guys moving here and these guys moving there, and we're looking at the map. And that was the whole idea, is let's do a podcast, but look at the map and show people where things are. And so they get some context on what's going on. So that's right before all the combat started. And so we were able to really, within our first few episodes, talk about a massive war or an invasion. It wasn't really a much of a war. So
trial by fire in your own way then, right? In a way?
Oh, yeah, because we had like technical problems and we had all the content. We just couldn't express it as well as we wanted to. Our mics weren't that great. Our lighting was terrible. I was doing it from work, so you could see the office behind me. And it was just really like low expectations, which we try to keep it that way.
But I think your vision's been the same, more or less, though, right? You've refined it, of course, but even just the way you just described it now is still pretty much what you're doing. 5 years, very successful. That's longer than most in most games, certainly here in EVE. I think there's a few long running, but yeah, good job.
Thanks. It is the same mission. It's always been to essentially our vision is to bring the complexity of EVE Online, the anthropology of EVE Online, to players that don't understand it yet completely, because it's a great big wide world. And some people are just getting started, and other people haven't really been paying attention and don't want to pay attention. But we try to flush out the complicated stuff that's all behind the scenes and interwoven with one another. We try to push that all to the table where anyone can eat. So we try to make it understandable. So if you see me breaking something down with an analogy or personifications of, things into animals, that's my attempt to make it relatable. Yeah. All right. Let's see. First thing that's up is, now we'll go to the news. Looks like going to be a busy weekend in the Delve Aquarius area. We have 6 Keepstars slated for destruction. We haven't seen that kind of a wave of destruction since the Imperium wiped out Tribute, where they took down, I believe, multiple Keepstars per day. I think 5 in one day. But the record for a month, if I'm not mistaken, was 7. And as we said just the other day, record in March here, March actually broke the old record, which was 7 Keepstars in a month, with about 13 Keepstars destroyed in March. Now we're starting April. It's the 1st. And this is not an April Fool's joke. That's 6 Keepstars slated for final timers. And that's happening this weekend. So 2 days.
Yep. Yep.
And let's see what
Busy
else.
weekend.
Let's see. Of these Keepstars, some key ones in here. GOP TAC GE. Actually, let's see if we can get that one activated. Yeah. That's not where GOP is. GOP should be in Aquarius. So I don't know why it put me there. We'll try that again.
One of the ones on the edge, though? Is that why it's taking you there?
It is not on the edge. Yeah, no, it's in fake query or fake delve and in Aquarius. We'll just go there manually. That's not the Keepstar. That one was destroyed last, maybe 2 weeks ago. And that was an important one because that one would jump to W6, which is, I think, slated for destruction, and then up to GOP, which is also slated for destruction. Let me double check that. Yes, here it is, W6V. That's an important system. Let's see if that takes you there. No, it really just takes you to delve, so that's broken. But,
Yeah.
but I can manually drive us there. So this one here is going to be this weekend as well. Bring you back here. And that's, let's see.
There was a lot of fighting to knock. There was a big operation a few nights ago. There was some reasonable fights. Lots of bombers brought by the Imperium, and fun little brawls. They did try to mount a bit of a defense for their armor timer.
That was yesterday?
Yesterday or 2 nights ago, I think, maybe a couple nights ago. Yeah, I was on that fleet.
Oh, good.
That was not too bad. That was kind of fun.
So they, I suppose they were unsuccessful then because it's still, this looks like it's still up for grabs.
That's correct, yeah.
So the IHUBs weren't, they would have been fighting, no, they would have been fighting over the Keepstar, I guess.
Yeah, over the Keepstar. And yeah, they had it paused for a bit. Unpaused. Or paused, which way is it? Paused, I guess, right? Where yes, they were
applying damage.
Yeah, exactly. We were applying the damage, but they reduced our damage to the point where the damage paused,
slipped.
right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it was unpaused.
Right. That's right. Yeah, it was on the timer. Yeah, that mechanic, right? And so they were, it wasn't like they didn't show up or anything. They did come for a bit of a fight. They did their best, and we just kind of just kind of kept working at it. Yeah, lots going on in that space though, and they're also, I think, at the same time they had a fleet somewhere else in another part of space doing some other work. I think a Fortizar or something. So they were doing something somewhere else as well. So counterpunching as we're punching, and that's the part I think that I'm finding really interesting to see how the war is going to rotate or revolve. Kind of around delve and see where that goes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting to see some. We've talked about this a few times already on the show. Others have as well. What's the next phase and what really happens next? I think it's just going to be really good for the game overall. And I applaud both sides for working hard and doing the things they're doing. I don't want to necessarily be one-sided about it. I can see the positives and negatives on both sides.
Right. You're on the PAPI side, right?
Yeah, I am on the PAPI side, for full disclosure for those just listening for the first time. Yeah.
All right. Well, were you fighting in W6V or were you in GOP?
No, I made the W6V fight.
That's an important system. This is actually a highly, I wouldn't call it highly, I guess I would call it highly prized constellation right here in the middle, because if I zoom out, you can see it's in the middle of Aquarius, but also it's an industrial area because when people live in Aquarius, this is one of those areas that you want to control because it's kind of a gateway, as you can see, to multiple different constellations. So controlling that sector there is kind of like controlling the heart, or one of the hearts. There might be two.
Yeah, that 9 CG 6 TAC H there, that was kind of like a main, it's like a hub system where you control that. You get the road up back into Delve through 8QT, through 49 TAC over into Catch, and then back up all the way into the far runs into the fake delve and to low sec into the canid areas, right? So it's kind of like one of those central systems. You control that, you kind of get to fan out in all directions.
Yes, it's the heart that
Yeah,
everything needs to go through. As you can see, it
that's right.
combines this whole area here with this.
And then that was the manufacturing hub hanging off of that heart, basically, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, W6 was a manufacturing hub. 9GC was a strategic hub, I believe, but they were all together. PTAC-Z was also strategic because it blocked this area here from this corridor. So this whole area, important.
Yep.
I wouldn't say W6 was prized. I think you're right that 9CG was the actual prize, but W6 was definitely a little dead-end system. You could do some mining. There used to be stations there. They're no longer there, but that was one of the reasons that they were, I think there was like 2 or 3 stations in that constellation. So they were very important. Remember, there was a time where a station that a player had built could not be destroyed at all. You could only take it over. So you could conquer the station and then use it. And the people who had it before, they couldn't use it anymore, but their stuff wasn't destroyed. There was no asset safety. They just couldn't access their stuff. And so those stations became strategic points of gathering all across the maps of New Eden. And that was maybe 3 years ago that totally got changed. So now everything's destructible. And that's why you're seeing this completely clean map without stations. You can see a couple stations here in Delve because those are NPC stations. So those won't be destroyed anymore. But you see Aquarius, there are no stations anymore. It's kind of wild.
Yeah. Yeah, I just looking at the map and thinking back kind of to the, I don't know, about 6 months ago, the NDII gate camps, and that has a very long warp, if I remember the system correctly.
Oh,
and you could put some pretty good gate camps in there because anyone coming from those 2 other forks would come into KL and then would jump into NDII and have this long warp. I think if that was the right one. Yeah. Maybe it was KTAC-L.
It's L3 TAC and KTAC-L that have the long warps.
That's the one. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe I'm thinking the KTAC-L on the NDIO gate. That's what I'm thinking. So you get into KL and you can gate bubble from both directions. They're fairly long warps. You can have eyes. You can have interceptors. If you have your interceptor faster, then you can still get, back down to the gate. And then often you could have a gate camp on the NDII side as well, so anyone can jump through. That's where I'm thinking. So because I would do both sides of the gate. That's a fun system. So if anyone's looking at gates systems like that, those are kind of ideal places to put gate camps. Just as a little side note for me in my mind, because you have these nice long warps. People enter warp, they think they're safe, and 5, 6, 10 seconds, maybe a slower shift, 20 seconds. Your interceptors are there. People are talking on comms. You got 20, 30 seconds to figure out what you're going to do, whether you're going to take the fight or bail or fight on the other side. There's all sorts of tactical advantages having 20, 30 seconds to talk about it. And there, if you look through regions, you can see there's a number of those in all the reef, right?
Yeah, that's L3 is a 46 astronautical units AU radius system. That's huge. But there are bigger ones here, like this one here, YQX, and this one over here in red. The redder the larger the system is.
Yeah.
It is 9
there's some very large jumps in various regions. I can't remember the name. It's 110, 120, 135 long, and it's even in an interceptor. It takes a good little chunk of time.
Yeah. Okay, so you can check that out if you hit the radius drop down on .lan. It'll show you how big the system is. The scale of the system is how wide you have to travel, which means it takes you a while to warp. So the redder, the longer it'll take you to get from one side to the other. Okay, so Keepstars again this weekend. Gonna be busy for PAPI. Gonna be busy for Imperium as they try to resist. All right, there was an unusual and somewhat unfortunate destruction here for a Pandemic Legion guy who was going to build, I think he was going to build a Revenant because he had that in the trunk. Here's a Revenant blueprint. So that is not actually registered as any kind of a price, but that would be quite an expensive blueprint. They used to be 100 billion to build. I don't know what the blueprint actually costs, but a lot. And it got destroyed because I think he hit autopilot accidentally or something like that, and it was an accident, but I forget exactly how it was characterized.
And that copy dropped, right? So
yes, it did.
Yeah, so like Loot Pinata for sure, right? Someone got that.
Right. Now the Revenant is a faction super capital ships. Imagine there's two things that are going to change in a few days that are going to become a lot more expensive. One is super capitals. Two is faction battleships, faction cruisers. So combine those two, and that Revenant is going to cost a lot to build. So you want to get that done right away. And unfortunately, that one will get done by somebody else. I think this guy also may have accidentally or maybe on purpose, what do you call it? Reprocessed a HEL, H-E-L. That's a super capital ship. I heard that that's late breaking news. So I don't know. He's having a bad day, this guy, our friend here. So who was it that got him? Dark Side. Yeah, they're good.
Lots of tackle needed on a yacht, because and he even had a workhorse stab. So
oh wow!
Someone's asking in the audience. I thought they were unable to be trapped in a yacht. No, not true. If you get enough tackle and you get enough points on anything, they're not going anywhere.
It's a scoring game. Do you want to explain how disruption works?
Sure. So
engine disruption, basically.
Yeah. So make sure I get this right.
Mm-hmm.
So there are like warp disruption bubbles and stuff that are allowable in places like nullsec. They don't work in lowsec. These are these bubbles you hear about. What that does is it adds like a point to the nullification side of the equation, and you can have points on the ship or points on the warp core stabs, which adds positive points to the I'll avoid the nullification. And ultimately, it's an equation: which side works best. If you have 3 points of avoidance and they can only put up 1 point of nullification, then that's +2 to you, and you get to go away, to keep it simple. So if in a case like this, I can't remember what the yacht is, but let's say it's 2 points naturally, and he's added a third. That means they have to get, I think it's at least 3 or it's 4. It's one of those 3 or 4. And that's where I can't quite remember.
Tie goes to the defender.
Yeah, tie goes to the defender. That's right. So 0. So they had at least 4 or greater on here. This is in low sec, so there would have been no bubble. And then there's scrambles, warp scramblers, and warp disruptors, which have some slightly different effects in terms of what happens to things like micro warp drives. And then basically got to go look through the ship and the mods to decide what your plus is. Some ships will have natural natural element to it.
Yeah.
An attribute. That's what I'm looking for.
That's pretty good. I understood it. Let me see if I can break it down to like our more simple. If somebody says to you, put on a long point. Actually, I'll ask you, Rundle. What are they saying when they say put on a long point?
Long point is either a ship or through certain modifications, you're using a warp disruptor that's 36, 40, 45 kilometers or further, depending on the ship. Some will have bonuses, will give a very long distance. Generally, most scramblers, it just rule of thumb, 10 kilometers for a warp scram, 20 to 25 for a warp disruptor. But then the long point, you have ships and additional modifications that can get you way out, 45, 50, 60, I think.
Right. So you said it exactly right. It's a long range pointer, and a pointer is a grappler, basically. So you're disabling somebody's engine so they can't escape, and you've caught them, and now they can be wailed upon by your friends. And so that's what tackling is all about. It's getting enough points to actually trap somebody. these ships, this one here that just got destroyed, this shuttle has, as you said, a natural immunity. So it might have 2 points of defense. That means you have to put 2 points on that thing, actually 3, in order to overcome the tie goes to the defender. And then you shut down its engines because it's naturally resistant to having its engines shut down. That's one of the special parts of that ship. So these guys probably had 3 or 4. Or you use something that has, because one module will have 1 point. So you can have 3 guys with long points and they can all grab the same guy, if successful, and lock him down.
Yeah.
But normally you would have short range. So you don't have the long point, but you have a scram. So that's a lot shorter. So you have to be closer to the target. But if you apply, you actually get 2 points. So in that case, you might only have 2 people that are close enough to the target, and you get a total of 4 points, which overcomes the natural defenses of this ship, which would have been 2.
Right. And then you also, those are like the disruptors and scramblers are kind of like a player to player interaction. But there is also, there's the interdictors, which are the class of T2 ships, destroyer ships. Those have warp nullification bubble creation modules. And then there's heavy interdictors as well, which can take scripts and can increase the effectiveness of the bubble. And there's a bunch of mechanics around that as well. So
yeah. So one more thing about this, and that was this thing had, and you mentioned it, this is why we're talking about it, it had a warp core stabilizer. And that module, it totally nerfs your range. So you can't really shoot anything. But what it does is it adds a point to your defense. So this guy that might have had natural 2 points, now he has 3. And so that's even harder to overcome. Now the attacker has to get a total of 4 different points on you in order to shut down your engines. In this case, this ship here should have escaped relatively easy because it's hard to put 4 points on a single target. I think what happened though is he hit the autopilot accidentally or something. So he wasn't even aware that he was slow boating towards the gate, and he might have gotten annihilated before he did that. I don't know if they actually tackled him or just destroyed him outright.
Yeah, alpha'd him or something. It
Right.
would be pretty tough alpha with all those resists.
That's my guess. And let's see,
And as the audience talking about, there could have been some scrams involved, which are more the points. The scrams have more points of nullification. They could have had 2 or 3. There's only 6 pilots, so when you look at the mix of the ships there.
Yeah, he was autopiloting, I think, and he went the wrong route because he didn't have a certain system set to avoid. Therefore, it took him through a more dangerous route, and I think that's why he got nabbed. So
Yeah, whoops.
Yeah, I don't think he was piloting actively, although he must have been, but I don't know. So a little bit of a mystery there. All right, so there was also a bunch of, let's see, a Nyx carriers got sniped. I don't know what that means, but Dread Bomb took on Test and Fate Bolus and won, I believe. Siege Green was fighting in Black Rise, and we talked about the epic loss of a rare ship there. I don't think it's actually a rare ship, but it's the prize ship. And Imperium Scorched Legacy policy continues. All right, whoever's writing these headlines, you got to give me more than that. We're gonna have a talk like that. That's definitely a headline, but I don't know anything about any of that. I can just bring up battle reports, and then you guys can look at it like I look at it. So okay, this fight just about a 50-50. That's Delve. Same thing, about 50-50. You're right, then. You guys are squaring off with Imperium, and it's closely contested fights, it looks like. Snuff gets wiped out by Siege Green. And Dread Bomb wipes out Test. Looks like, it's Tempest Fleet. Yeah, I thought those were Nightmares, but it's Tempest. I don't know if they'd be risking a Nightmare fleet right now. Nightmares are going to go up in price. So lots of combat in those areas.
Yep. It should
Okay.
be a busy weekend, I would think, as well.
All right. So one of the topics I wanted to bring up today. So that's it for that. Let's go back to. Whoop. Okay. I was going through the game today, trying to figure out. I was looking at some of the stuff that we've been talking about, and there was some stuff that just hasn't been clear yet about the industrial changes that are coming. There are some new skills that you will want to acquire, and I don't think we focused on that enough. Part of the expansion of the industrial gameplay is that in order to create these reactions that are new, these are new reactions. They're like new recipes based on old materials, basically. You have to have certain skills that you didn't have to have before. And so I brought up here the list of the new recipes that are here, as you can see. And I went ahead and consolidated the skills that you're going to need and to what level and that sort of thing. So I'll write these out and put them in the show notes, but some of them come from the science category, like the engineerings, like electromagnetic physics, electronic engineering, high energy physics, hydromagnetic physics, those kinds of skills like mechanical engineering, molecular. This is called molecule engineering. It's actually molecular engineering. It's just a typo. But then you have nanite engineering. This one here, neurotoxin control, actually comes out of biology because it's part of your booster resistances and that sort of thing. So it's not in your science area. And then you have nuclear physics. It doesn't tell you what level you need nuclear physics, but I assume 5 because most of these you're going to need the science skill to be at level 5, and then you'll make sure to do anything. You'll be able to do any of the reactions. You know if there are some reactions that you don't want to do, for instance, you don't need to go all the way to 5, but 5 is what you need to do some reactions. So we just gave you the maximum because people will probably train all the way up. Quantum physics, and then there's reactions, and reactions actually comes out of, I believe that comes out of resources or resourcing category.
Resource processing.
Resource processing, that's it. Yeah, just where you do your refining skills, that's where you'll find reaction skills. And so you need that to get that to 5. It's a very basic skill, so it won't cost you much. And there are additional skills, 2 other ones that give you 5, 1 per point, jobs to be able to run, 5 reaction jobs. So if you want to run 10 jobs at the same time, you're going to need to get both those skills up to 5. 5 and 5 make 10, and you'll be able to do 10 reactions. But those are optional. Those are not prerequisites. That's just how much you can do at once. You definitely need reactions to 5. So I looked at that, and that's like 250. It depends on your implants and your where your character is as far as attributes, but more or less it's about 2/3 of a year. So it's a considerable climb that you didn't have before if you want to do the reaction parts of the building of these subcomponents that go into the new ships or the new faction ships, the battleships, and everything above. So yeah, so check that out. It's I think it's about 7 or 8 science skills, and then a couple from other categories.
Yeah, neurotoxin control is from neural enhancement. And I suspect a lot of people in high-sec will not bothered with that because its primary use is for combat boosters. It helps reduce the side effects of combat boosters. And so the likelihood that a high-sec person has trained that. So keep an eye out for that one. That's one that caught my eye for sure. It's probably about 8 days total-ish to 5. I would say a lot of high-sec people, if they've done their training, if they're existing industrialist people, they should have lots of these to 4, possibly a number of these at 5. Most recipes and just kind of people have gone at least to 4. I think some of the recipes are needed for 5. plus, if you're also doing research and talking to research agents, the higher your skill is, the more research points you get. So maybe the people may have already got a few of these ticked off, but this certainly seems to expand the list of what most people would have done for 4 and 5.
Okay, I wasn't looking at chat earlier because I forgot about it. Rude. But I will go and look, and it's actually just Ash Dorothy. You should just jump in here, Ash. But I will look at it and answer some questions if you have any. Are those Omega skills? That is a good question. I don't know if they are. I assume they are. So Omegas are basically made to do like minimal. Sorry, alphas really are just tasting the gameplay. It's so when they came out with alphas, the idea was that you could legitimately play EVE Online in an alpha if you wanted to. But the advanced, like the super advanced gameplay would require, in order for you to proceed in a proficient manner.
May I jump in on this?
Yeah, let me finish this and then you can jump in, Ash. Okay. In a proficient manner, then you would probably need Omega skills. But the idea was you should be able to play EVE Online completely with an alpha. What do you have to say about that, Ash?
Yeah, so basically this has to do with how free-to-play affects the game as a whole. Alphas, the problem with an alpha, the biggest concern about an alpha is if your account is free, then you can have as many of them as you want. So I call this the power of infinity, right? This is the problem. This is the alpha problem. So if alphas were producers, if alphas could efficiently produce, then all constraints on production are meaningless because you could just scale it through just having multiple alphas. So alphas having free-to-play accounts having means of production is game-breaking to design. However, consumption is naturally balanced by the fact that if you consume more, then they need to produce more. The market will affect it and all that stuff. If you have more people out there doing things, then that's actually good for stuff. So from a free-to-play point of view, it's like, yes, you can play in this game forever for free, but you are a consumer, not a producer. You're a worker, not a ruler. And that's just the way that the alpha and the omega dynamic works. So things like industry skills, PI skills, even things like market skills, alphas are hamstrung not just because CCP wants their money, but because if you allowed alphas to be just as efficient as omegas, then there would be no point in having any constraints on omegas whatsoever.
Yeah, alts are considered tools, or characters actually, for some players are considered tools. They're like hands. So you have your body, your spirit, your decision-making center, and then you have hands. And if you have one character, you have one hand. And if you need to do something that requires 3 or 4 different hands, you either have friends that help you do something, like lift furniture, or you develop 5 other hands, and then you can lift the couch yourself. So that's
right.
That's really how people play EVE Online on an advanced level. They have multiple characters for multiple purposes, and they intermix with one another so that they have a full range of things they can do that one character can't do alone unless he has friends.
Right. So what alphas can do, what alphas do get when it comes to industry, is they get 1 or 2 industry lines, which is fine. That's basically all they really need, because all of the things that make things more efficient go into the blueprint and the facilities and all that stuff like that. Skills only ever make anything go faster, not cost a different amount, and therefore it doesn't change a bottom line. That's baked into things like the research of the blueprint and the facilities that you use. So an alpha that has the blueprint and the materials can rub them together and make a thing just as effectively as an omega can, but they can't do it at scale. So it's just a matter of the alpha will have to work with other people. They'll have to use the market to source the things that they cannot produce themselves.
Rundle, you have anything on this?
No, you covered most of that stuff.
Yeah.
I think. No, I'll just leave it there.
Okay, good.
In interest of time.
I also do want to jump back in and talk about the yacht thing, because the answer is very obvious. There's a dictator in the fleet,
Mm-hmm.
So that Dictor was infinipointed and probably C-bowed, and then all of his tricks don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Why is the
Makes sense.
Dictor? I thought the Dictor just had a second point, like it had a
No,
bonus.
a Hector. Sorry, my bad. It's a Hector. It's a
Yeah,
Hector.
yeah,
'Cause
okay.
It's a, my
Yeah,
bad.
you meant
I said the
Hector,
wrong
yes.
one.
Yeah,
I said the wrong one in chat too. Gosh darn it. It was the Amar heavy interdictor. Devoter, I think, right?
Right, which is a cruiser-sized ship, so it's bigger than the frigate-sized ship. They do the same thing, but one's bigger than the other and has more power.
Right. So the destroyer has a launcher that launches probes, and that probes sends out the bubble and stays there. The Dictor is the bubble, and so like a Dictor can move around and its bubble. Sorry, a Hector can move around and its bubble will stick with it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, see, when you're on, it changes when you have to talk to people about it, doesn't it?
No, passes and pocos, man. I'm so bad at this. At any rate, so a Hector, the bubble stays with it. With the cruiser one, the bubble is part of it. It's a module. And so what that means is that module can actually be scripted, while the destroyer fits charges inside. So you can do things like a big bubble, or you can do like the web bubble. The Hector can script their super point to go, or their super bubble to go from being a full bubble to being what's called an infinipoint, which is a single point that has effectively infinite point. And this is why Hectors are so dangerous to supercapitals, and why it's basically considered that Hectors are essential to killing a supercapital in low sec in particular, because you can't bubble there. So if you don't have a Hector pointing a supercap, that supercap's probably leaving.
Yeah. So it wasn't just a stronger bonus; it's an infinity bonus. So it's the trump card that wins.
It's an infinite bonus, and it has particularly long range for a normal scram. And if it's an abyssal one, or it depends how crazy they want to make it. They could get it out to 30 to 40 kilometers. So he could be sitting on the gate and can, as soon as he decloaks, if he's not immediately on top of recloaking before he warps, that Hector is C-bowed and grabs him, and then you have yourself a yacht.
Yeah. And that can be used anywhere, not just nullsec.
And SIBO means sensor boosted, which means there's other ships that are adding boosts to that ship so that its lock time decreases, which means you can get your lock time down to almost instant, right? And so, you're good explanation of the Dictor versus Hector. I always like to think of it as the very similar. Dictor launches a charge into space, and you can see it, and the Dictor can keep moving, but the bubble stays still where at that launch point. The Hector, the heavy interdictor, takes the bubble with it, or like you said, scripts it, becomes a single point to point. Like I said, with the modules are one-to-one player interaction. The Hector can do that, or be an area of effect weapon, whereas the Hector can, whereas the Dictor is an area of effect, but at the area is defined by where the module is activated and launched at that point. And the Dictor continues to move, and this is often where you'll drop a bubble and cloak and move away, cloak very slowly, or you can continue to orbit a gate or something and drop the Dictor bubbles around, creating, and they only have a certain lifespan. They will peter out after a couple minutes, stuff like that.
So just to make sure we're being, and we do this in reverse order, we get simpler and simpler as we go, which is probably not the right order. Right? We should probably go
probably
the
not.
other way. So it's an intradictor, that's why they call it the Dictor, and then you have the heavy intradictor, and they shorten those names to just make it easy to say. Okay.
Easy to say. That's exactly what it is. Obviously, it's easy to say because of how easy it's been to say.
Naturally.
I'm actually going to drop off and go live.
Oh, okay, good. Good, because we're almost done.
Up.
Yeah, we are wrapping up.
So I'll see you in a minute.
All right. What are you going to be doing?
I'm actually going to just pit around for a little bit. There's another newer streamer that is also pretty cool that I would like to raid in about an hour. But I'm going to, in the meantime, what I'll do is hunt for pods in HiSec, or actually no, I have a plot, I have a scheme, but I'm going to be hunting for the capsules for the event
Mhm.
and showing people like how to use DScan and stuff.
Oh,
I thought you said plot, like you had a plot of land and you were going to go farming or something.
good one.
No, I've got a scheme as to how I'm going to find the pods.
I see. Okay.
So we'll visit you in a bit. We'll raid you in just a few minutes. Okay, so
Awesome. See you then.
see you later. So if you've been thinking, we were talking about this yesterday. I think we'll talk about this every week. If you're there, what is your reaction to the changes that are coming in a few weeks? We assume in a few weeks, definitely going to be April. We assume mid-April. You're going to see everything start to get more expensive as far as ships go, the majority of ships. So what are people doing to be prepared for that? How can they take advantage of that? And I want to give you some context on what's really going on here is essentially a seismic shift of that we've only seen a few times. There was one time where they actually changed Plex, Aurum to Plex. That's a seismic shift. It's a gigantic shift that is going to affect everything, especially money-making opportunities. There was a giant tax change that happened. That was a gigantic shift as well. There was tier side that happened about 8 years ago, and that was a gigantic shift. So there have been moments in EVE Online where something so fundamental changes that you really need to take advantage of it, because you are lucky to be here right now. The people who are going to suffer the most from this change are the players that aren't here yet. They're the ones coming in a month and beyond. Those guys don't get this chance to turn basically 5 gold coins into 15 gold coins like you do. There was one other shift, and that was when they divided out the skills. There used to be just a destroyer skill, and I think just a battlecruiser skill, just one for all races. And CCP said, no, we're going to make each one race-based. So there was going to go, you were going to have one skill, and it was going to be made into 4 skills, one for each race. And so if you had skill level 5 for destroyers, then you would get level 5 for 4 different races of destroyers. And so you multiplied your one skill into 4 skills without having to train all that. That was another seismic shift. So that's the kind of opportunity that's coming.
Yep. And there's one other, when they chopped Plex from one into basically 500. That was another one.
Thank you. Yeah.
And there was a bunch of pricing and stuff that went along with that, with multi-character training and stuff like that. And there were people, I was lucky enough to do some of this where you were able to buy some Plex at a certain price and the multiple character training at a very low price as part of a bundle. And then when it went and flipped over, your money was like instantly tripled, not because of the split itself, but because they readjusted the price of some of these things relative to the Plex needed to buy it. And then from that point forward, then the market took over. And I was lucky to listen to some people at that point. And I was like, well, thank you very much. I wish I'd actually put more into it, but oh well, it is what it is.
And that's exactly what we want to do for our audience, is to tell them how they can take advantage of this. I know it sounds like we're selling you something. Don't take our advice. If you don't want to sit still, you'll be fine. Things are going to change. You're not really going to be hurt by this.
If you send Rundle All-Nighter 100 million ISK, I will send you my special investor's guide to EVE. It's only good, 1 day sale, only April 1st sale. I have it written up. I've made people billions and billions of ISK in this.
Act now. Okay, so, but if you want to take advice from us, the thing to do right now is to get into items that are changing, because those are the ones that are going to expand, basically. So you're going to have, let's call it a faction battleship, for instance, that's going to be, right now, I think it's 120 to 140 to build, 140 million to build. Most of the actual cost of a faction battleship is in the rarity of the blueprint, right? You have to, it's loot. So people will, since it's easy enough to build the battleship, it only takes minerals. The blueprint is like anywhere from 200 to 400 million ISK. And then to build it, you just need another 120, and then you've got a faction battleship for about 520 ISK. So I was looking at a website, which I'll show you now. And this is where you can double check a lot of stuff that we're telling you. Let me see if I can find that. Here it is. Okay, so this site is called Eve Cookbook. And what you can do is say, let's go with a faction battleship. I'll tell you what, they'll make this participatory. If the audience wants to give me a recommendation on a faction battleship that they like, I will look that one up first. I'll just give that a second to happen. And if not, I'll go ahead and pick one myself. Okay, Macarial. They said Mac, so we'll call it Macarial Blueprint. This is Angel's battleship. It's very fast and brutal. It has a lot of firepower, and it's very fast. So we're going to go ahead and let's see.
And by the way, while you're clicking all the buttons there, when he says faction battleship, he's not necessarily meaning, correct me if I'm wrong here, I don't believe you mean like the Raven Navy issue. You're talking the combined. Those two? Yep. Oh, okay. All right, those two then.
Yep. We'll check that one too. We're talking pirate faction here. There are different factions, right?
That's what I thought. I thought those were the only ones that, but okay. So then the other ones too. Cool.
There are pirate factions, there are military factions, and there are like Sisters of Eve factions and Outer Ring excavations. So they're different. Yeah, those are all factions. So anything that is not one of the four empires, standard issue, is considered faction on the smaller ships. So the Macarial Blueprint went ahead and calculated, and here's the result. Total estimate build cost, 1.2 billion. So you look at all the ingredients that are going to be necessary. There are some reactions in here, some mycosaracin here. That's new. I think all this stuff has to be put together, and then you figure out that it was worth right here, like 1.170 million. So this Macarial right now does not cost $1 billion. So you can just buy it for 700 million and you'll probably make a profit. Or you buy the blueprint and you build it for 120 million. The blueprint probably is like 400, 500 million. So you're still getting it at about 600 million, and it's going to basically double. So that's what I've been doing all day. And now I'm inviting you to compete with me, picking up faction blueprints and just building them, because they will go up. There is no doubt. There is doubt about normal battleships and everything below. All that might get cheaper. So that's not a real secure investment right now. And T2 materials, that may come, but that's not announced. That's not announced for this month that we've seen. So that may come later. So you can take your chances and wait for that. But right now, the real smart money is getting in on faction, and faction battleship is probably the best place to invest right now. And let's see what else we got. One of my favorite ones is really cheap right now. I bought these for 630 million. I just bought them off the market a little while ago. These are the rattlesnakes. And the rattlesnake went up in price to like 780 million like the next day. So it's not at that price anymore, unfortunately. But this is going to end up costing basically 1.1 billion ISK. So again, if you're buying it at 780, there's a lot of room for it to go up in value. Now, the reality is, if you buy it now, and if you buy 100 of them, which is way too many, let's say one. If you buy one, and you hold on to it, you may not be able to sell it right away, because there has to be time for the price to increase. People are going to be dumping stockpiles a little at a time. So that price might not go up to $1 billion right away. Eventually it will get there, because the cost of materials is, the cost of materials will equal that. Now, here's the interesting thing. That's the build cost. This is where it gets crazy. So the build cost is 1 billion. What's the blueprint cost? Remember, the blueprint is rare, therefore it has a higher price. It used to be faction battleships. The blueprint was the cost, and you had a little bit of money for the build cost. But now the build cost is 1 billion. It's like nearly 10 times what it was. So what's going to happen with the blueprint cost? Is it in addition to? Is this going to cost 1.8 billion for a faction battleship? I don't know. Honestly, don't know what the market will do. Probably the blueprint cost is going to have to come down because the build cost is so big. So I imagine if you're looting a faction battleship, you may not get 500 million for it anymore. You may actually only get 120 million for it because people just don't want to pay 1.7 for a faction battleship. So this could really flip looting upside down. I don't know. It depends on what the market will bear. So another thing that scared me, because here's the thing with T2 materials, the moon goo materials, right? Which went through a huge change not long ago. I thought I'm going to invest in things that take T2 materials. And there's only two things that are really like mops that sop up all that T2 materials. And of course, all these modules, right? But modules don't really need a lot of materials unless you're making a lot of modules. But there are some things that really sop up a bunch of it. And that is the jump freighter, because it's a T2 capital. It's the only T2 capital there is. And the Marauder, which is a T2 battleship. It's not quite a capital, but it's close. So those two ship types, they absorb a ton of T2 materials because they're much bigger. And so that's where I like to invest usually when I'm trying to make a good purchase or something. So I went ahead and bought a bunch of jump freighters as soon as I heard that the market was changing and all this stuff was expanding. And then after I bought that stuff, then we had the reaction stream and we started learning about the details. And it turns out that really the jump freighters and the freighters are kind of they're not really involved in this change. So I thought, like, they weren't touched because they really kind of want to work with the price point. And that price point has a lot to do, especially with jump freighters and freighters. It has to do with the dynamics of ganking, because ganking ships just went down in price, right? Catalysts and battle cruisers are all going down in price, which means not that it was a big cost problem for them, but Talos costs something if you're using 10 or 12 of them, and those are definitely going to get destroyed. That means you're not going to shoot an empty freighter because you're just going to be losing money. So the fact that those ships are going down in price, if the freighters go up in price, it becomes a really nice value proposition for gankers. So I think one of the sticking points about freighters and jump freighters is to try to keep their costs reasonable, because they work as logistics ships and you kind of want that circulation in the game for people to move nutrients around the body kind of thing, to move supplies to different regions of the game. But you also don't want to make beautiful big apples for these gankers to shoot, I think. So I don't know. I think that might happen. So I got worried thinking, oh no, jump freighters aren't going to go up in price. And I just made the wrong purchase by betting on jump freighters again. But let's see. I think I bought.
So if your predictions are all wrong and none of this stuff, I don't think they're wrong. But just in case, here's what I want to ask you: will you shave your head in 6 months' time if you're completely wrong?
No, not at all. No, I have big ears. I need to cover it with. That's why I have big headphones and I have big hair. If I shave, I'll just look totally different. No, this is not advice for you to do things, except get into something. Go look for it. Use this website, Eve Cookbook, to figure out what's going to go up in value and where is it now in cost. And there's one other thing about this before we look at this Anshar, this jump freighter cost. There's one other thing about this. These prices are today's prices. So we may see a ton of supply get pushed into the market by CCP, basically turning on the faucets and letting all this supply come into the marketplace. and then these prices across the board will go down. But we don't know if that's going to happen, and if it does happen, we don't know when that'll happen. So it's interesting. Remember, the gas is going to have a bottleneck, so there's going to be definitely in the next 3 months, I think, a ton of pain as far as price goes, because if they haven't already turned on those faucets, the water won't be there for when you jump into it. In other words, they should have done that a month ago so that the market gets flooded and there's plenty of material to work with. Otherwise, you're going to have a shock to the system, which is what's going to happen. We're going to have a shock to the system when they turn this on. So I was looking at it, and Anshar sold for like 8.5 to 9 billion. It's going to, according to this, go up to 15 billion. So I didn't get screwed after all, but who knows?
And those are basically just using today's prices to estimate the future price with the new recipe. Just to be clear what we're looking at, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And
today's
so,
prices.
right, this is today's prices. And so future prices on some of these commodities will likely go up as well. And so future build prices, and therefore the price of the resulting chip, whatever it is you're building, will also likely rise as well.
Right. Now, I feel terrible talking about like multiple jump freighters. Remember, I've been playing the game for 12 years, and I was paid like, $20 billion a month just to be the editor for INN. So like, I'm working with a different set of numbers, but if you cut off zeros from me, that may reflect your situation better. You'll be doing the same jump. It's just a different value proposition. So if you only have 50 million, or was it 40? I only have 40 million. Just buy some stuff. That 40 million will turn into 80 in a couple weeks. If you have 200 million, I'm seeing other people, you don't have to buy a faction battleship for 500 million. Just buy faction frigates. Let's actually look at a faction frigate. I was doing this earlier today. Give me a faction frigate, or
just like a oh crap. Isn't there a Federation Navy Rifter?
We'll do the Federation in a minute.
Or those
are a little different.
Yeah, the Dremel, that's a good one.
I'm just thinking of one that might, somebody's always going to buy a Dremel, which is the Macarial's little brother, right? It's the frigate version of the line. It's the frigate version of Macarial, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That one is going up to 54 million. And that's its build costs. Remember, that's its build. That doesn't include the blueprint. And I think right now it's selling for 30 or 40. Firetail. Let's look at Firetail. Remember, the blueprint may not be its price that it is now. It may have to come down because the market won't buy it that expensive anymore, which is a very interesting thing. Let me get that right. Now we're getting into the navies, right? So the empires have specialized navy ships, and those are like factions for. They're like the elite ships for the empires. Those are going up in value too. So the Firetail is going to come out at like 33 million. And right now, I believe it's selling for 8. This has 8 to 10. So that's a huge jump, right? Remember, this is build cost. That's not BPO or BPC cost too. So in addition to whatever this build cost is at today's prices, it's going to go even higher than that by a lot, by a percentage of what the total cost is. Because remember, most of the faction cost is in the blueprint, which is not here. So it's amazing how much the production cost is going up for faction stuff. It's amazing. All right, so I just wanted to give you guys that heads up because we gave that advice yesterday, and I went through and started to look at the some of the details of this, and just wanted to really give you guys as much information as possible that will benefit you right now. Again, however much money you have, you are in better shape than anybody that comes after these changes. You have the capability to buy an egg and get a chicken. When those people come, they're only going to be able to buy chickens. So, and eggs are a lot cheaper than chickens.
Did you really just do an Easter metaphor?
Oh yeah, I totally did. Didn't even think of it. All right, we took too long. I think Ashtarathi's probably waiting for you, so let's get you over there. Here's the website. You can check it out. Eve Cookbook. It's easy enough. So
Yeah, a few of us have linked that for you already while you were talking.
All right, good. Yeah, check it out. Look up a bunch of stuff. Look at the estimated price. Remember, that price can and will go down probably, and the blueprint cost is not included, so that can go down, or it might stay the same, which means that the price is even bigger than we've said. So good luck out there. Don't miss this opportunity, and don't be sad about these changes. It's going to make the game feel a lot more valuable to you. All right. Thanks, Rendell, for hanging out with me. We're going to
No problem.
send you guys over. We'll see you tomorrow. But for today, that is all for Talking in Stations.